Welcome to another edition of the Blue and Gold Gridiron Show, where I am absolutely honored and super excited to have Coach Bob Young and Coach Stephen Evans on the show this week. Both outstanding coaches, and I spend probably too much time on the treadmill listening to various high school football coaching podcasts, but I would argue that this is the first one you're going to hear where Coach Bradshaw and I are obviously coach at Prescott High School, as we've talked about, and we have our hated rivals on tonight, the Bradshaw Mountain Bears, and Coach Young and Coach Evans from Bradshaw Mountain. Of all of the coaching podcasts I have watched, and I have watched many, I do not believe I have seen an episode like this today, and I promise, I made everybody in my house a promise that I would not say better off dead than black and red once in tonight's episode. I absolutely won't do it. But seriously, on a serious note, absolutely honored that they are joining us tonight. We're gonna talk about some wing T stuff, and we're gonna talk about vertically aligning your program, and they do an absolutely amazing job. Obviously, I knew a ton of Coach Young's history, having quite frankly gotten my butt kicked by him more than a few times. But I was looking, and my homework has already won over 200 games in Arizona. I lost track of the amount of region championships, but it's over 20. Just an incredible career. State champions in 1997 at Mingus Union High School. Has done an amazing job at Bradshaw, one of the top, if not the top program in the Grand Canyon. He is super excited to have him on and learn from him tonight. So I want to thank him, and I want to thank Coach Evans. And before we get into a couple of the topic at hands, we're going to talk about a couple things that I know all coaches out there can be difficult, but something you absolutely have to do, and that's fundraising. In these budget crunching times, fundraising is vital for your team's success. If you're looking for the easiest, and I'm telling you, I am not very good at this type of stuff, and I'm like all of you, I would say, head coaches out there. Fundraising can be a pain in the head coach's rear end, but this is the easiest, most money your team will make. Let me tell you about School Funder. They are the only online fundraising company in America that lets you keep all the money your team raises. No more high unnecessary fees. Sound too good to be true? It does, but I can tell you, but it is true, as our team used them last year for something we were already going to do for our spring lift-a-thon, and it was everything they said it would be. In a few short weeks, we were able to raise nearly $12,000, and best of all, we kept all of it, just except the 3% credit card fee. With the other companies, we would have to give upwards of over $2,000 of those dollars back to them. The extra money we kept with School Funder mattered, as we use it to feed the team all year. Added something this year where I fed our guys breakfast in the mornings on Wednesdays, tons of team meals, and we also have used it to help feed our guys during off-season workouts. You wouldn't give up 20% of the wins your team earns, so why give up 20% of the money they earn if you no longer have to? Teams all over Arizona and the U.S. are switching to School Funder. I highly recommend you visit schoolfunder.org. That's SCHOOL Funder, FUNDR.org, schoolfunder.org, or you can hit me up at cody.collette@prescottschools.com, and I can get you connected. Please, please, please say the Blue and Gold Gridiron Show sent you, and it'll help out the show there. But honestly, I would never, ever say anything on here that we have not used personally, and they did an absolutely amazing job for us. So really, really thankful to them for their help with the show, and I would encourage all of you Arizona coaches to contact schoolfunder.org and set up a demo today. All right, Coach. Coaches, like I said, super excited to have everybody on. We're going to get started here with some questions, and we're going to kind of, what I wanted to do, since we have Coach Evans does some of the lower level stuff with the freshmen. Their freshman team has done a great job. I think they were 8-1 this year, and really the only reason they lost the one game is they played pretty much our JV group in the one game. They were pretty dominant in every other game. Our JV group, we had a freshman sophomore group. Our freshman group did a nice job this year, but we were fortunate to have 3 teams So anyhow, he did an amazing job with that younger group. Coach Young, like I said, his resume speaks for itself. I would say unquestionably on the Mount Rushmore of Northern Arizona football coaches. So first question that I wanted to talk about, and we'll let both you guys kind of discuss it a little bit, is what about your offensive system do you feel gives you and your team an advantage? So Coach Young, we'll turn it over to you first.
Well, I don't know necessarily it gives us an advantage, but I think the kids know coming in, once they get acclimated as freshmen that this is what you're going to see for the next 4 years, and there's going to be consistency, with what we're doing on offense, and terminology is real big, as you get guys in the NFL, they talk about, they trade teams. It's like learning a different language. It's the same offensive stuff, but the terminology is different. And so I think our kids, they know, once they learn the basics as freshmen, and they come right up the ladder, and they just get a little bit more information every year. And I think that's a huge advantage, because I know, we've played programs for years, and you guys have as well, that the freshman offense doesn't look anything like what the varsity does. You try to, well, okay, well, what are these kids going to learn in the long run? So that's I think that's important.
Yeah, I think simplicity for us is a big thing. To tag on to what Coach Young just said, I don't think it's any secret we're not building rockets in our offense or in our defensive schemes. Our goal the entire time is to be able to teach our kids conceptually what we're supposed to accomplish when we're running a concept. If we're running blast or sweep or boot or whatever it is. And I think the big thing that helps us is from the time when they're freshmen, there is a consistency in terminology, and there's a consistency in the concept of the play and what you're seeking to accomplish. So you have a kid, whether it's a skill kid or a lineman, that lineman should conceptually know what's supposed to happen all the way across the line of scrimmage. That wing back should know what the fullback's supposed to be doing, and what the X receiver is supposed to be doing across the entire formation. That doesn't just help them accomplish their task, especially the way they're supposed to, but it also helps us plug and play and put the best 11 guys on the field when you know what's happening across the entire field the whole time.
Coach Young, you mentioned that you kind of will add more as the kids go on and level up. Is that something you guys strategically plan out and have a set structure for? Or do you guys kind of base it on the class and the incoming players you have?
That's a good question. I think you have your base stuff that you going in every year. You want the freshmen to learn 4 or 5 basic formations, and the base run plays and the base pass plays. And if you get a group like this year's freshman group, they'd played a lot of youth football, and they could grasp some stuff. So we added some things that a lot of years we wouldn't be able to add with that group. But I think, like I said, every year, we try to add a little bit more, and we really don't have a JV program per se. Most of our sophomores are, we have to plug them in on varsity. So, it's after their freshman year, we expect them to be varsity ready as far as knowing that part of the system.
I know in preparing for you guys through the years, it's always such a difficult chore. And this year, I noticed you guys added, and you talked about it a little more jet sweep stuff and some stuff from under center that was really, really problematic. That I know in our preparation made it extremely difficult for us. Already, there's so many things you guys do so fundamentally sound that make it so difficult to stop. So, next question. Do you script your first few plays? And if so, how do you go about it? And what are you looking for in that script? What are you thinking about? What are you trying to get accomplished in that? If so,
Yeah, I know at the varsity level, we try, based on what you see on film and what you expect out of the opponent's defense, we do. I have about a 15 play script, and, we'll look at, and I learned this from a lot of ex offensive coordinators, that you try to show a bunch of different formations early and kind of see how the defense adjusts to each formation, and then you go back and kind of see where you're at from there. So I've taken that philosophy a little bit. I just, want to see some different things and see what, see if the defense can tip their hand a little bit as far as, okay, what are they going to do against this set and that set, and it just really try to get our kids in a position to get off to a fast start. So we try to run those plays that hey, if we can jump on a team, and get a quick score, then we're going to try to do that.
When you put that together, Coach, are you looking at what does your group excel at more, or are you looking at what are you going to take advantage more against that defense?
All of the above. I mean, and every year's different. You try to, when you watch film, you try to see what are the weaknesses of the defense, what are the strengths of the defense. And there's a lot of years. I know, you guys especially, you've had some years where you had some unbelievable defensive ends, and we said, you know what, we're not even going to try to block these guys. They're just going to run away from them. And a lot of times, it depends on what you got, and you got to go with your strengths. So, I mean, if you've got a really good, when we had Gabe Ricketts, we were going to line up and ram the ball down your throat. Now you put 9-10 guys in the box, and we still felt we could get 3-4 yards out of it. And, so, every year's different, every week's different. You just try to, game plan to give yourselves the best chance to be successful.
And Coach Evans, how do you tie that into the freshmen in terms of vertically aligning the program and keeping everybody on the same page? Because I know that's one of the things that I've always been most impressed with, and how Coach Young runs the program is when you play that younger group, you're going to see sweep, you're going to see trap, you're going to see boot, and they do such a good job. I think as Coach was talking a little bit formationally, I know the varsity kind of seems to build on the formations and is a little bit more versatile on that end, but how do you go about implementing that with the freshmen? And when do you get the idea that maybe, like you said, this year, Coach has said this year, you added a little bit more? How long does it take you to maybe know, hey, with this group, we can maybe add a few more wrinkles and to the system and things of that nature?
Well, we've been lucky. Obviously, Coach Evans, has been there, I think, 4 or 5 years. And he's done a lot of he's kind of been the head freshman coach and worked on defense. And we had Troy Head, who has been an invaluable. He's kind of been our offensive guy, and he understands wing T, and I could show him the concepts, and he's more of a cave. He's even more of a caveman than I am. I mean, he. He literally throws the ball less than I do, which that's hard to do. But so he understood the dynamics of what we wanted, and that's the key at the freshman level. You just got to have great teachers, because that's what it is. I mean, you literally got to teach these offensive linemen how to get in a stance, and teach the running backs where to line up, and all that stuff. And so that's the key there. As far as us understanding, I think we start getting these incoming freshmen in June. We have them come and do workouts and practices with us, and I think it was fairly early in June that we recognized, hey, we got a group that they understand football. The first 15, 20 guys of those freshmen, they could grasp more than just learning the basic stuff. So, and we just gave them as much as we could throughout the season.
Coach Evans, do you have any follow up?
Yeah, I think you actually started the answer, Coach Collette, correctly, which is just that we're not gonna window dress as much on Wednesday nights and Thursday nights at all. Our formations are going to be pretty simple and straightforward. There's going to be no surprises in what we do, but I think the non-negotiables, with Coach Young, at least, if I want to keep my job, what I'm doing at least, is that when they show up their first day of their sophomore year, they better know what a trap is, they better know what a sweep is, they better know what a boot is, they better know, if you're a guard, you know what you're doing on those plays, and they better be able to get that 50-50 ball. And really, that's really it. There's no, we don't want to throw 35 formations at them. Make it super complicated, run a lot of complicated. I think really this year, and it's no secret, it's no surprise to you guys, I think this is the first year we really ran a lot of hurry up on Wednesday night and Thursday night this year, that at least since I've really been here, because we'd rather them, what is, I'm not going to get the phrase right, but slow is patient, patience fast, and getting it right the first time. And we'd rather them have that stuff grasped. And then once we hit it into fifth gear, once they get to their sophomore and junior year, and then by the time they're seniors, it's second nature. But when we try to go too fast, they're not doing. You guys know that they can't get their first step right. We're trying to teach them the fourth, fifth, and sixth step after that. So they need to know in their sleep, what are we trying to accomplish in these plays, and what is my job on this play, and how do I play a larger part in that entire process. So if we got those non-negotiables lined out, and that's Coach Young and I talking in the summertime, what do we want them to be able to do throughout the year? What does this need to look like right now? And it's less about, and when I know we know this, it's less about what I want to accomplish and how many wins the kids get on Wednesday night and Thursday nights, and how do we win that game. I mean, we're as competitive as they come, but we want to do it in a way that sets us up for long-term success. We don't want to take the cheap points. We have the more talented team. We want to make sure those kids are ready. Those kids are prepared and ready. I'm sure there's some different stuff we could have done with our freshman group this year that would have been a lot of fun that we tried out in Madden first. But that's not what that doesn't win region championships in the Grand Canyon region. So we want to keep that alignment and those non-negotiables and stay on the same page about them and get those kids ready for that.
Don't worry about losing your job. I've been fired probably, I think, 6 or 7 times now this year, so somehow I keep coming back.
True. He made a couple observations. He said something about U of A, the Wildcats, and I had to fire him. It was just that was the non-negotiable.
It was that and the cats over the dogs.
No question. No, that was it. He got fired because he said he liked cats more than dogs. And I think everybody out there listening would agree that is a fireable offense.
I think Coach Young has threatened or fired me on a Wednesday night and a Friday night on the sideline probably a good dozen times in the last 4 years. But I get the job back the next day afterwards. But
I figured I don't want to do it, so.
All right. Well, moving on here. Next question. You've already talked about it a little bit, but walk us through how you go about game planning, what weaknesses you look for, and what, I always like this one. This is a fun one. What does your call sheet look like on a week-to-week basis?
I used to do the fancy, stuff where you have it all on a wristband and stuff like that. And honestly, now my call sheet, and basically what we do, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we run through what we think will work against a certain defense, or what we think we're going to see, and we weed out the plays that it doesn't look very good this week, and there's always going to be a few plays that we just pencil out, and plays that there's maybe 5 or 6 run plays that we say, okay, this is going to be our bread and butter, and then whatever we have, passing game, screen game, whatnot, and then I try to have I basically just have a clipboard, and on there I have, okay, 1st and 10, you have the breakdown 1st and 10, second and whatever, and I try to use that as much as I possibly can, and through all the years I've been coaching, honestly, since I've been at Bradshaw, the 4 out of the 5 years I've called plays, I don't really like to call offensive plays. That's not what I would prefer to do, but it's just been kind of a necessity. When I was at Mingus, a lot of times I had Rick Walsworth. I had different guys, and I was a lot better coach when I didn't have to call offensive plays. I just thought I was a lot better coach, and as Cody, there's so much involved with everything, and then you're worried about calling plays, but so I try to keep it real simple as far as the call sheets and stuff like that, and then the things we do in practice, the way we line up our offensive practice. We have different series, and we kind of work one series a day. And, like I said, we'll have whatever plays we think we're going to run that week. We really work those hard. And then, by Thursday, that's when we've got our script ready to go, and we rehearse it, and then we go out and try to execute it on Friday.
Well, you guys always do a fantastic job, and I will definitely second that. I am a much better head football coach when I am not involved. Well, I wouldn't say not involved, but when I'm not calling the plays. Having to do that play-to-play, I think, is really, really difficult. There's guys that are smart enough to do it. I'm not sure that I'm one of those guys. But next question, And I know this can be a different one because there's different youth systems and feeder systems. Do you encourage your youth league to run the same system, same terminology? And we've already touched on a little bit, but Coach, if you give us a little bit more on how you do that with your youth levels, or if you just worry about running camps, or what that process looks like, and then Coach Evans, if you want to chime in also about how that relates to the freshman side of things.
And Coach Evans can probably hit on this more because he's actually more involved with the youth, and I think we're a little unique in Prescott Valley. We've got literally two or three different youth organizations, which is not conducive to what we really want. We've got the Hitmen, and then we've got the Avengers, and throughout the course of time, these some of these parents, I think there's a rift, and the sad thing is when they get in high school, we're all the same, but we haven't been able to convince them to, hey, let's just be one, like the Prescott Badgers. You have your youth program, but I know we have, especially when it was the Hitmen a few years ago. We did some youth coaches clinics, and we gave them basically our what we gave the freshmen, and we wanted them to implement that. And I think some of the coaches did do that. And obviously that's always the goal of, and I tell them, you don't have to run our whole offense, but it'd be nice if you had our terminology and you guys be coaches and run what you want. But, as long as the kids know the name of the formations and what we're doing, that would be helpful. But like I said, we've struggled with that because of the different types of organizations. And I know Coach Evans, you can give a little bit more input on that.
Yeah, there's definitely been a rift, just like there would be anywhere with multiple teams. We saw it, before when I was down in the West Valley. You see the same thing. A team starts and they get going, and then they're the Coyotes. Then somebody else calls himself the Coyotes, and it's like it turns into this whole thing. But I think the big thing that we care about that helps us a lot, at least, is terminology is good, and if they're running similar plays is good. But I think what does it take to build a good fundamental football player? And what does practice planning look like? What does fundamental teaching look like? How can we do that safely? How do we teach them to tackle safely? How do we teach them to enjoy the game? How do we push them and keep them engaged in practice the entire time? How do we make sure they don't quit because they're sitting on the sideline and there's 40 kids lined up on the sideline and parents are yelling about how many plays they're getting the entire time? I mean, I'm not diminishing the X's and O's, but I care a lot more about that stuff. I mean, those things are really important. And if a coach, he's dad's volunteering his time and he wants to call a play a zippity doo dah, and that's what he wants to do, and that's what works. That's fine as long as practice is good. If we're teaching kids to love football and making them passionate about things, and we definitely have our concepts, and I think a couple of our teams really did adopt those concepts this year, and it did show with our freshman group. I mean, we had some alignment with some of our position coaches on varsity that had coached some of their kids the last few years for those majors teams in Hitman, and it definitely showed out. It's still showing out with those groups now when we have that consistency in concepts. But I mean, I think that's secondary to just teaching kids how to be football players and how to fall in love with the game. If we have kids coming in that are used to putting on a helmet and chin strap, that enjoy contact, that enjoy competing in practice, I think we can teach them. Like I said before, our offenses can be taught in a pretty short period of time if they walk in with those skills.
Follow up on that, Coach. For you guys, what are some successes and struggles and kind of bridging some of those rifts, maybe? But then also to a point you mentioned earlier where, Wednesday, Thursday nights, you're trying to get the kids not so much to focus on the result, more their execution or their role in the process. Could you just elaborate on some of those things a little bit more?
Yeah, well, the like Coach Evans said, there's always going to be rifts. It's not just in our community. How parents can be sometimes, but I think we just all try to work together, and we've reached out to all the organizations, and we let them use our field, and like I said, we hold some youth camps, and we try to get the coaches together and do some things. As far as the freshman JV games and the success versus the development, and that You never hear our younger coaches talk about winning and losing. It's all about we've got to get better. We got to block better. We got to tackle better. We need to, be able to run these plays better. And I think that's, and the kids obviously want to win every game, as do the coaches. But I think at the end of the day, just as long as they understand, we're just trying to get better every week. We're trying to get you guys to a point to where, uh, number one, we want you to love the game because there's a drop off usually after your freshman season. There's attrition. You're going to lose a bunch of those kids. They just lose interest in the game, and just try to keep as many of them as around because I've had so many kids that didn't play a lot as freshmen, and and you guys have the same thing. They blossom by the time they're your junior, senior. They're some of your best players, and they had a bad experience. We wouldn't have had the chance to coach those guys.
Thank you for that, Coach. Next up here, and this is always week to week, this is my favorite question to ask coaches, and I really, really enjoy it. Walk us through a typical practice week, both a game week and both in a fall practice, fall camp type setting. How many periods, how much time's devoted? Do you do offense, defense days? How do you incorporate special teams? But walk us through a practice both in preparation for installing your system and a typical game week, Monday through Thursday, and then you play the ball game on Friday.
All right, and I'll let Coach Evans can chime in as well as how he implements because he does a really good job with the younger levels on how they work their practices. Preseason we go to a camp in Heber, and that's we have a week of two-a-days, and that's where we really try to introduce a lot of our stuff, or actually not introduce. We introduced it in the spring and the summer, and just review. We really try to put in a lot of our run stuff, our base run stuff, with the team. I don't do a whole lot of. I do a lot of group stuff, during spring ball, and then in June, with the 7-on-7s, and we don't do a whole lot of team stuff until we get to that camp. And we'll normally, we always do, after we warm up and do all that, we do special teams first. We'll have individual specialty period, and then depending, usually during the season, Mondays we do punt return. Tuesdays we do kickoff, kick return. Wednesdays we do PAT defense. Thursday we review everything. So that's kind of our specialty periods for the week. Offensively, depending on the day, we'll do some individual drills. Like I said, depending on our what series we're running, like what we have, I call it our misdirection. That's our what people think wing T is, trap sweep boot. That's just one of our series. So we'll work on that one day. We'll work the running concepts. We'll have a little pass period. That's a lot, quarterbacks or receivers kind of stuff. And then, the next day we'll work the next series right on down the line. Defensively, same thing. We'll generally every day have some sort of a tackling, either a circuit or position tackling. We try to do that pretty much every day except for Thursdays during the game week. Then we'll have a group defensive session, and depending on the day, some days we'll do 7-on-7, some days we'll do a blitz period, some days we'll do a front seven to work on running concepts, stuff like that. And then during the week, we go pretty hard. I know a lot of programs, they don't do a lot Monday. We'll hit it pretty good Monday. A lot of times we'll go shorts and shoulder pads, but we really try to get out there and do a little bit of popping. Tuesday, a lot of popping. Wednesday we taper off, and then Thursday we go shorts and shoulder pads, and we kind of have a script on Thursday. We kind of go through a script, go through all of our special teams, 2-minute offense, all that stuff. Coach Evans.
Coach Evans, how do you go about? That's a great question too, because the freshman schedule, with the games being in the middle of the week, obviously has to be a little bit different, and depending upon what your responsibilities are on Friday night and whether it's a road game. And as we know in the Grand Canyon, a lot of times those road trips, we're making 2-hour road trips to play a ball game. So how do you go about putting that together for the freshmen week to week?
Well, you're right about that. I mean, we even had a couple Tuesday games this year. I think we played on Tuesday nights a couple times. We played a Thursday night, and then we played a handful of Wednesday nights. So I think that's a good dovetail into my answer that we seek to accomplish all the things that Coach Young just laid out pretty well, but we do it in the cracks and margins of the varsity schedule. One thing we really started doing this year that I think helped us quite a bit. It was different, but we did a lot more program-wide practices integration, where the varsity position coaches have more of a hands-on role with the ninth graders and some of those brand new 10th graders. So that helps out a lot. With that being said, as a staff that makes sure we're, the couple of us that are making sure we're fielding a competitive team on Wednesday night, we got to make sure we're crossing off all those things when it works for the big show. So if we can squeeze it in here and there, or, hey, varsity's running a little bit late to film, let's squeeze in an individual period with all the varsity defensive individual coaches. And that sounds unorganized, but when the goal is just to teach them, you take the margin when you get it. I think that's helped us out a lot. Hey, as long as we get done with this stuff sometime this week, kids and players are resilient. They're gonna. I think we as coaches, we're control freaks, and we got to have it this way and this way and this way and this way and this way. And hey, you know what? You just roll with the punches and you just do what you can do. And if you're teaching special teams, an hour, hour at the last hour of the practice the day before the game, it's as long as it's getting done, or it might be at the end of last week when it's there. Oh, we got time on Friday. Varsity's getting on the bus and we got the ninth graders here. We're going to go through some special team stuff because we got banged up, the last couple nights. We're going to get that stuff done. We're not hitting as much. So you just take it when you can get it. Absolutely. And as you guys know, once our monsoons roll up in the Quad City area, you got to be really flexible. All of a sudden, those things change. In a hurry. So that's not just a freshman problem, that's an everybody problem. So sometimes those key things that you thought were going to be thudding, you're doing it in the gym, and then you're throwing kids whiteboard markers and you're having them explain stuff to you on the whiteboard afterwards. And so you just got to find that balance between these are non-negotiables, and then how are we going to roll with the punches and be flexible with the things that we can't control.
I like it. How did your freshmen take, or how did it impact them working with some of those varsity coaches?
I think it helped them a lot. I think where it really, what came to my brain right when you said that is we had a handful of freshman football players that were phenomenal athletes and competitors and had played a lot of football. That being said, they hadn't been on a high school field very much before. I think that having varsity position coaching from the jump right away, made them realize where they were on the food chain right away. So I think it helped break down some of those habits that just happen naturally when you're an amazing, mighty or minors or majors football player that you can get away with. But then when you line up against your rival school in blue and yellow, they've done enough pursuit drills. They're just sitting there waiting for you the entire time. They're not falling into that. So I think the varsity position coaches help level up that intensity and that preparation right away in that area. It breaks bad habits, it enforces good habits right away. And even having them just in lines, even with the varsity kids sometimes, and the varsity kids are coaching them up, and you can't slack, you can't lollygag or go halfway if you're a great athlete when you're a freshman, because the mediocre senior is going to push you and he's going to be better than you and he's stronger than you. So I think that was what I enjoyed the most about about integrating the program a lot more, is seeing the kids level up their intensity and practice so quickly.
That's a great point, because that's always difficult watching them make that jump to varsity and being able to catch up to the speed. Usually your freshman practices are catered a little bit slower, but having those guys be able to make that jump and get that coaching right away is a huge advantage, I would say. Coach Brusso, you were going to add something there?
Well, I think that's great. I imagine that as the years go on, there's kind of some ebb and flow. You said your freshman class this year was a little bit farther on, so sometimes I'm sure you got to slow it down a bit. But I don't know. I really think that it's great that you have your seniors and your other players jumping in and pushing one another, because I've always felt, we can preach whatever to whoever, but if another kid or another player says it to the peer, that goes 10,000 times farther than any of us older gentlemen saying something. So I think it's awesome.
You already touched on it a little bit, and I love the idea of installing your offense based on series. I think that's really, really good stuff. But I would be remiss if I didn't talk about Coach Young, like we've talked about, has had so much success, and I think schematically they do a fantastic job. But to me, the secret sauce to some degree for you, I know, has always been the weight room and what you do in the weight room and how you guys implement that. Your guys they don't even look like the same human beings by the time they're seniors than they did when they were freshmen. So talk to us a little bit about how you go about organizing that. And I know I was bummed last year at the AZFCA. I think you gave a clinic, and I'm going to butcher the name of it. It was something to the effect of old school principles with new age kids. And maybe elaborate a little bit on that and how you've kind of implemented that, because I know anytime you play a Bradshaw Mountain team or when Coach Young was at Mingus, they are so physical and so strong and do such a good job. The only team that I've seen in our coach in the last few years that even approaches them physicality wise is Snowflake, and they are unbelievably physical too. But elaborate a little bit on that.
Well, I guess a lot of that's my upbringing. When I was in high school, it was Jesse Parker, and if you weren't physical, you couldn't even walk on the field, and it was a whole different thing back then. And then, at Mingus, when I first got to Mingus, Mingus was a doormat. I mean, they were everybody's homecoming. Back in the '70s and early '80s, and Bill Rudolph is the guy that turned the whole thing around, and I got there his second year, and we decided that what, we had to get in the weight room. We had to get the kids to buy into the weight room. We had good athletes back then at Mingus, and they wouldn't play football because they always got hurt and couldn't play basketball after that. So we sold him on the weight room, and then when he retired, I just tried to continue that, take it to another level. And the thing that and you realize this as well, being in northern Arizona, we just don't get the same kind of athletes that they had back when we played the Chaparrals, and the year we won a state championship, we had to beat Centennial, Chaparral, Apollo, and Sabino, and they rolled out 5 or 6 D1 kids, and we had a couple kids that could maybe play at Glendale Community College, and yet we beat them all. And it was just that we got after it in the weight room, and we were physical, and that's what we're trying to do at Bradshaw. And it's just obviously you got to get the kids in the weight room. Number one, you got to have a really good program. I've always been a bigger, faster, stronger guy. Um, with some implementations, and just get these kids buying into that. And we had a lot of success with multi-sport kids. I mean, that was the other thing. I mean, we won state championships in wrestling and baseball, and it was the same kids, and they all lifted the same weights, and they were good because of that. And I think in high school, that's the key. And you guys have done a really good job with that as well, is just getting these kids, and that's what, I know Coach Evans and I have talked about this a lot, just seeing these little freshmen develop and get stronger and bigger. And, by the time they're juniors and seniors, they know they can do it. It doesn't matter how big they are. They know they can go out and physically get after people. And that's just been something that, we've had a lot of success with over the years.
Has your approach had to change much from back when you guys were saying you were kickstarting up at Mingus versus, now in Prescott Valley at Bradshaw?
Um, I'm softer than I was back when I started, and I know a lot of you get to ask the kids right now, they wouldn't believe that. But um, the kids haven't changed. It's a lot of society has. I mean, a lot of things around society, a lot of the things that we were able to do. I know Coach Collette remembers the old Pink Belly days with Bernie Buskin and all that stuff, and that was a staple when we first started. I mean, that was just something that you did, and you didn't think twice about it, and it was just all part of being a football player. But we don't have as many kids now that want to put the time in, but the ones that do, they work just as hard as all the kids I've ever had. I mean, we've got good, hardworking kids, and and I think they see that they can be successful if they want to put the time in, and so we're still blessed to have really good kids that way.
Just a follow up on that. If those of you listening don't know, obviously Coach Young's been a tremendously successful football coach, but also a really, really successful baseball coach. How do you go about working with a multi sport athlete, and does your program change based on that, or how do you go about implementing that? Because I know you've coached baseball for many years. Coach Winslow, who I had the pleasure of sharing an office with for 8 years, always spoke very highly of you as a football and baseball coach. So, talk a little bit about working with the multi sport athlete and incorporating that into your program.
And that's something I know Coach Evans is real big into that because we're both big proponents, and Coach Evans coaches football, wrestling, and baseball at Bradshaw. So I mean, he does me one. I help out with baseball, but he's the definition of multi-sport coach. But it was just something. At Mingus we had 1,000 kids, and we had to share them. And I was fortunate enough to I was the head coach for football and baseball, so I was able to convince a lot of the really good baseball athletes that and nowadays they just think they got to play club ball, that hey, listen, you can be a better baseball player and physically tougher if you play football. And we had a lot of success with those kind of kids, and it showed. I mean, that was our depth, and that's one of the things that we don't really have at Bradshaw. I haven't had the same success, getting baseball, basketball players to buy in. And I know you guys, your quarterback, had, had, he just played basketball. You'd be a less football team, and we
You
got a
think?
bunch of
Yeah,
those
he's
kind of
spectacular.
kids that Coach Evans and I try to convince to play football, and it's been a struggle, but it's so valuable for these kids. And I've I've coached baseball longer than football, and I had a number of kids get drafted at Mingus, and every one of them played football, and they'll tell you that they were mentally tough enough by playing football, high school football, made them better baseball players. And you try to impress that on these kids, and whether it's baseball or wrestling and football or track and football, basketball, it's just a huge advantage if those kids will do that.
Coach Evans, I knew you coached wrestling too. I didn't know that you were a three sport guy. That's awesome to hear. Do you have some
Effective.
stuff to contribute on that?
Well, I don't know if I'm the first call they make to help coach another sport, but I like to think I'm not the last call they make after a while. So, I think the big thing that makes an impact in a kid's life is when, and Coach Young hit on it. You guys see it every day. You guys have done such a great job in the Prescott community. Is you're teaching a kid that may come from a great family, may come from a less than great family, and you're just teaching them how to care about something and to buy in and to learn how to compete for their brothers. And I think that's something that translates so well into multi-sport. In the weight room, like we talked about earlier, they get after it and they fall in love with it. But then it just teaches them how to compete. I love and the name. We all know the names. We don't say them on the podcast, but we know the names of the kids that are on the edge of not making it in life. And Coach Young and I spend way too much time talking about it in the weight room every day. The kids that we have a heart for and that we pray for and that we want to do well. But when you see them come in, not really sure who they are or where they are, and they can't get a ride to school and they can't get this, but then slowly you start to see them buy into what we're doing, hang out with those same kids after a while, and before you know it, you look back and you're like, man, this kid didn't even know what a football was when he was 13. And now look at the transformation in his life. And I say that because it translates into other sports. Then, they learn how to just love to compete and make themselves better. Well, when football's over with, they're sure I'll go in the wrestling room and just sweat my tail off for a while and just see how it goes after a while. And then before you know it, they know what they're doing. They're coming home from meets in Phoenix at 10:30 on a Tuesday night, and they're having a great experience. So I think that's the great part about multi-sport is that it keeps them engaged, it keeps them competing, and it just teaches them how to fight through tough things in life. And I think to go on with Coach Young said, with what Coach Young said, you're just raising your odds. You're going to land somewhere at the next level, and it's not all about the next level. But if that's what your goal is, if you're dipping your finger into multiple sports all the time, you may think football is your number one thing, but guess what? You're going to turn into a pretty darn good little wrestler after a while, or you may end up throwing shot put after a while, and that work. Football may have actually prepared you to do that in college, but trying out that new sport is what's actually going to catch fire after a while. So you're just giving yourself more opportunities to find success when you choose to go multi-sport, and you're raising your likelihood for success in each one that you do it.
Are the other coaches on your guys' campus on board as multi-sport athletes, or how has that gone for you guys there?
Well, I think the coaches they don't discourage. We our biggest problem is the basketball players, baseball players, football. We have that 7th hour class, and I think a lot of times the basketball and baseball players feel that if they take 2 or 3 months off, uh, that's going to lessen their chance to either make varsity or to get play in college or whatever. And um, that's our biggest problem. It's not that the coaches are telling these kids, "Hey, don't play football." They don't do that, but um, and I know Coach Evans and I, we try to get every football player to do something after football. Every one of them. We try to get them to do as much as we can, and it's just it's I think a lot of times, especially basketball and football or basketball and baseball, is just embedded that these, I think a lot of the families just think, well, if we don't do it year round, we get behind. And that's certainly not the case. I've got a grandson that's a freshman now, and, he had been playing club baseball. And the best thing for him was he played football this year, and he got to take 3 months off. And he got back out a month ago, and it's like he's way ahead of a lot of the kids that have been there the whole time.
That's such a great point, and and you mentioned him a little bit earlier, but that was one of the things when Uriah signed with UCSD that I talked about. Is he, to me, just proved that you can be great at multiple things. You don't have to specialize, and obviously, he's a tremendous athlete, but his work ethic and everything is really, I think, what set him apart. I mean, he was still during football season shooting the basketball and doing things like that, and just a tremendous young man. But I think a lot of guys, you've seen a lot of guys through the years at both schools that have had so much success in multiple sports, and I think that's been exciting to see. And I'll be a little bit of a homer here, but the Prescott Bradshaw rivalry to me is, if not the best, it's one of the best in the state because it's always so evenly matched. You'll see it. You'll see some years where maybe Bradshaw has a really talented class, or a little bit this year Prescott has a really talented class, but year to year in all the sports, because I announce basketball and I always try to get out to Prescott Bradshaw games and everything, the rivalry is so competitive and it's so close, and that's been a fun part about it. And I think both schools really do a great job on that. So we are going to, Coach, if you don't mind, we're going to have you share your screen and walk us through a few concepts wing T wise, and we're excited to listen to that, and we'll chime in with any questions we may have. So take it away.
So anyway, while we're trying to get this loaded here, Wing T, the misdirection series is the bread and butter for Wing T. And when we first started running it back at Mingus in the 80s, literally all we ran sweep, trap, power, we ran an ISO, and that was our running. That's all we ran.
As it's loading, Coach, let me ask you, because I know I'm playing you guys the last couple of years, it seems like you've maybe, depending on the opponent, one of the things game plan wise, I don't know how this fits in, but sometimes you guys have focused more on power, sometimes more on sweep. Is that something you see week to week as a blitzing thing? You're going to go more to the power than the sweep?
Yeah,
or how
absolutely.
do you go about that?
And you guys know that you have to defend the wing T. One of the things that teams try to do, because we pull so many guards, when we have all of our guards covered, then we have to go away from like this buck sweep I'm trying to load, and we can't pull both guards. So, power, you basically now you're pulling one guard and you're leading with the fullback. So, um, depending on what scheme you're seeing, like I said, some weeks power is a big play, some weeks sweep. It just depends on, what you're going up against. But yeah, you're right. There's a lot of times that, against certain teams, we don't run a lot of traditional wing T stuff. Because they do such a good job. Either they read the guards, or they shoot the A gaps, in which you got to go to something else. And I think over time, our offensive coaches, we've done a good job of recognizing, hey, and we just can't keep running sweep and trap because these guys are well coached. We got to go to something else. And like you mentioned us running a lot of jet sweep. That's one of the things, jet sweep. And then, actually we ran some veer that I learned from, Coach Walsworth. When teams do a real good job against our guards, then, you do stuff where you're not pulling guards. So, we've got some different things.
You guys
There we
had
go.
Coach Walsworth and you were running
guys
some
see
flex
that?
bone stuff was really a handful. Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, so on buck sweep, the concept's pretty simple. Play side, we try to cave everything down, and then the guards are going to kick out, and you're going to run off tackle. If I can get it back here, you're trying to. What we're really trying to do, we want to try to seal. When we have a tight end and a wing back, everybody's caving down, so the hole should be right outside where that wing back is. So, if you look at this, pre-snap read, this is where we're trying to run the ball, right inside 56. And, that's, if you run it right, that's where it's going to hit. Now, Coach Evans, coach head at the freshman level, because it's you really have to school the running backs that they've got to be able to plant and get north south, and I think that's the hardest thing for a high school running back, because they want to get wide and get outside, but a wing T running back, they've got to be able to do that. We had Jordan Kelly a couple years ago. He probably ran a 5.140, but he was one of the best wing T running backs I've ever had. He had such a knack for reading his guards, getting north south, and then exploding. And that's I had some really good ones at Mingus too. And a lot of times your best running backs just can't grasp that particular concept. I don't know if I can get this back again. Sorry, guys.
No worries, Coach.
No worries. If you had to pick a favorite concept out of your misdirection, what would you say is your favorite? So I know defensively I could say what my least favorite is.
What would it be?
Yeah.
The just the misdirection. The misdirection itself. When you've got you can run basically trap, boot, or sweep, and if you can teach your and what we do, we teach our quarterback. Our quarterback has to hide the ball. Okay, so he's got to hide the ball where the linebackers can't really, because they see all this movement in the backfield, but they can't see the ball. So you have your fullback going, you have your tailback going. So if we can just confuse the linebackers to where they're a step or two off, then that gives our linemen a chance. And it's all based on position blocking. It's not we're bigger and stronger and you're going to blow you off the ball. If we can out leverage you, then that's and that's why we went to it all those years ago at Mingus. We didn't have big linemen, and and we we thought, okay, wing T, if we can out leverage people, we got a chance. So here we go, maybe. So I mean, that to me, that's the whole basis. If you can confuse the defense, and in high school, you guys got 4 days to teach kids, how to defend this. It's almost like, when you're going against an option team. You got 4 days to get these kids, and you got to play, you know, rules and positions, and it's hard for high school kids to do.
I know
Let
that.
alone giving a proper scout look.
That was just what I was going to say, Coach. That's one of the things that's most difficult about prepping for the wing T is I never feel like we can quite give anywhere close to a look of the speed you're going to see at it. Where when they play spread teams every week, they get better at showing those looks. But when then you hop into wing T stuff, I know it makes it very
Right.
difficult.
And
And what you said is so true, because if you guys just get a step, then all you need is 3 or 4, and then just fall forward, fall forward, fall forward.
and the thing is, the kids, you all it takes is one broken play, and then the next thing you know, you got 7 points, and and just like our boot pass off of that, you lull these kids to sleep. You think, sweep, 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 and then all of a sudden, boom, you got a receiver, that runs a V up instead of blocking, and all it takes is that little, that corner to bite or that safety to bite on sweep if you're having success, and that's where your big plays come from.
That was a huge part of your guys' win over Coconino this year is you popped those 2 big play action passes for long touchdowns. It was huge. And I know I'm not afraid to tell you, I told our guys all week this week, I was like, if they complete the boot throwback, I'm walking home. I'm leaving the stadium and I am walking home if they do that. So I'm just telling you guys right now, and I still think you guys completed it, but I wasn't a man of my word. I didn't walk home, but anyhow.
Well, that's always, we don't throw the ball that much, and when we do, I tell the guys, every week we're trying to hit 2 or 3 home runs, and if we can, you're going to win the game. We're not going to throw the ball 30 times and try to complete 25-yard passes. I mean, when we throw, we're going for big play most of the time. And that's, we try to set that up.
You guys do a great job of setting it up, no question about it. Coach,
Go ahead, Coach. Go ahead, Coach.
I was just going to say, we've talked a little about the misdirection series, as you call it. How do you guys go about your rules for your belly? Talking about your belly, and I am not super versed on wing T, but the play where you guys have the wing back lead up to the fullback has been, I think, probably the one we've had the most trouble defending. And I know I haven't done the data in terms of play to play, but it seems like that play has really been a chain mover. And I can never figure out, sometimes you guys are cross blocking, and how do you get the timing with the cross block and the wing leading? Because it looks like something that would take some work and some timing with, and you guys do a great job of it. So talk to us a little bit about your belly series.
And that, and again, that's a different series than trap boot sweep. That's a whole, because, to me, trap boot sweep, that is true misdirection. Quarterback's hiding the ball, and the belly series is more of what I call a power series. That that and power, where you got a lead blocker, because we're not really hiding the ball. We've got a few plays off of it, but our bread and butter off that obviously is giving the ball to the fullback, and the blocking scheme, we let the guard make the call on the side, the side that we're going to run based on what he sees, and if our preference is to man block it, and if like I said, we're all about angles, and if we can't man block it, then they make a call and they can cross block it. Um, and we have different calls, and obviously the guard and tackle, and then the back on that side, they all have to be clued in as to what the scheme's going to be, and it's just it's basically a get off the ball and try to get 3 yards. When we had Gabe Ricketts, he's a tough guy to stop, and he gets by the linebacker, and he's gone. And
He obviously
so
was a
we
spectacular player, but you've seemed to find guys that could get what you want out of that, even when you haven't had a big bulldozer like that at fullback. But even last year, I thought you guys did a great job running that play and incorporating that into your offense. And I personally, that's the one that we spend a lot of time prepping because it's so tough to stop you from getting 3 or 4 yards. It's
right.
virtually
And
impossible sometimes. It feels like.
it is. It really is. And the to me the biggest key is you got to get a running back that will get in there and get after a linebacker. And that's some of the times we've struggled with that. And we try to use we have a fullback, obviously, that's his role, but our two other, we call them slots, or tailback, wingback, they're kind of mirror images, or they should be, because I'm not going to give one guy the ball more than the other theoretically. And wing T, you share the load, and it's not like a one back offense. So both of those guys have got to be able to run and block. And you know how that goes. A lot of times you got your one guy, and like next year we got Kylan Jackson. He's a stud, and
He's
if
an
I'm a smart
absolute
coach, he's gonna run more than block. But in wing T, he's got to be able to get his nose in there sometimes and block that. And that's always been a challenge with wing T. If you can find those two kids that not only can they run the ball, but also get in there and block that linebacker. But it's a great play, and we've that's always something that if we struggled with everything else, we always thought we could get that belly to work.
And you guys have done a great job with it. Let me ask you, because having played against you for, I believe, a decade now, I think 10 or 11 times, had the privilege of competing against you guys. One of the always extremely difficult to prepare for, but the only one that I found even more difficult to prep for than your wing T stuff was when the year you had Coach Walsworth, I believe, was calling it, and you guys were very flex bone-ish. When you're incorporating those two schemes together, we're going to have Dane Thompson on in a couple weeks that just retired from Post and Butte, that's done a really good job kind of marrying wing T with veer concepts. How do you go about teaching that? And to me, it looks like when you guys that's been an ancillary play to your offense. It doesn't look like you've been reading it. But how do you go about teaching that and deciding what you're going to kind of marry your system to?
Well, when Rick first came aboard, and I think it was either his second or third year, that I felt that he was ready to call the plays. I kind of my vision was I wanted to mesh, because he was strictly an option guy out of Arkansas. That's what he knew. And I was a wing T guy, and I said, hey, I wanna mesh the two. And he says, well, you really can't do that and give it justice. So we tried that for a year, and we were okay. And then we sat down, and we had a group of kids. We had a really good running quarterback, and I said, just do your stuff. So we had 3 or 4 years where we basically ran his veer. I mean, we didn't run wing T for 3 or 4 years. We got away from it totally until he left. And when he left for Sedona, I'd learned, I didn't know enough about it to feel comfortable. So I went back to wing T and just kept a couple of his concepts, which, and the one thing I did learn from him is if you're going to be an option team, you got to be an option team. You can't really marry wing T and option. And that's kind of, like I said, we still have some veer concepts, and we're not very good at it. If that's what we did and we lived and died on it, we'd be a lot better. But I'm just not knowledgeable enough to want to do that. But I do have a series. If we think we can use it against an opponent, we will, and we'll try to do it. But So I don't know if that answers your question, but to me, it's really hard to marry those two concepts.
Oh, it answers it perfectly because I know that's exactly what you said was true when Coach Walsworth was calling it. You guys were almost primarily all flex bone, but now I think being able to add some of that with it, and even if it's small pieces, the one thing I can tell you from our preparation that it's definitely done is it adds another element that you have to at least cover. And I think that makes it more challenging to defend. There's so many things about the wing tee that are difficult to defend, but even having a quick little veer series where you might just be handing the dive off, and maybe it's not a huge piece of what you're doing, but being able to do that as well, I know has made it difficult in our preparation. So, Coach Brusso, anything to add there?
Yeah, this is kind of a follow up to a previous point you mentioned, but you're talking about tailbacks having to run and block. And I just curious, I figure that once those tailbacks get a knack for blocking and getting their head in there and getting dirty, do you find that helps them become better runners and more physical and downhill for your scheme?
Yeah, and we say we pride ourselves when we want to be physical, and that's part of it. You've got the running back art, and they know, and Coach Evans will tell you, they know as freshmen that it's not about running the football because most of the time you're actually going to be blocking. So, and I think they know that that's just one of the expectations, and that'll get them off the field quicker than anything. I mean, if they fumble the football or they miss a block, they're going to be standing by me. So, if they one of the things about our offense is, I mean, if we've got three guys running the ball, then we're moving, we're rolling, and I feel pretty good about that.
Well, Coach, I just want to thank both you guys for joining us. I know I learned a ton. It was really great to have you on. And all joking aside, I really appreciate the opportunity to compete against you guys. I think one of the top programs in 4A is Bradshaw Mountain, and I hope our listeners enjoy the episode. Please like and subscribe. Our episodes come out on Wednesday, so get on there, like and subscribe. It's completely free, and I'll turn it over to Coach Brusso for the last word, but thank you so much for joining us. I had a lot of fun this evening, and good luck in your off season. I know we'll see you for some 7-on-7s and things this summer.
Yeah, appreciate you guys having on, Coach Evans. Great to meet you, and Coach Young getting to play against you, and I'll coach against you. And I guess technically you coached me for 1 month at Prescott back in, was that 2010, 2011, something like that? Long time ago.
Yeah.
But it's great to learn and sit down with you guys, and I'd be remiss if I didn't wish Coach Klett a happy birthday today as well. So thank you guys. I had to wait till the end.
Appreciate it. I appreciate it. My daughters were awesome. My wife and daughters made me dinner and little cake and everything. So totally blessed. So you guys have a wonderful week, and I'm sure we'll chat soon. Like and subscribe. Blue and Gold Gridiron Show. We'll be back next week with another solid episode. Thank you to you gentlemen, and have a good evening.